Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Improv Autopsy. I'm your host, Stephen Cadwell. This is part 2 of my interview with show director, show host, improviser, and all-around incredible guy, Rob Ward. If you didn't catch part 1, there is still time. Whether you do that or not, please enjoy part 2 of Rob Ward's Improv Autopsy. Because I know you've hosted so many shows, do you have any recollections, and you wouldn't necessarily have had to have been there, any recollections of proposals gone wrong?
Oh, yes. There's one that immediately jumps to mind. We've done so many proposals over the years.
Yeah.
I've been the host of many of them. Also, when I was a manager, I was the one who would book them because they would call and we'd set it up and I'd tell the players that night, here's what we're doing. Here's a plan to how to get through it.
Okay, well, stop there for a second.
Yeah.
So when they're calling in, did you ever turn anybody down? Was the request ever so crazy that you were just like, yeah, we can't do that?
Yes, several people. Because I'd have people who would be like, so I want to then come out, we're going to throw confetti and we're going to do, and I was like, well, all that's wonderful, but this is still our show. And yes, we want to be a part of this amazing moment, but it also can't become your show.
Yeah.
Your proposal is fitting within this show. And there were definitely people who wanted to create moments that it was like, hey, we might not be the venue for this because we have an audience that has paid tickets to see our show. So while your proposal would be a lovely surprise for that audience and a nice heartwarming moment, if it becomes a point where it takes over our show, now the audience is like, did I pay money to watch a proposal?
Yeah.
Or am I watching the improv show that I came for? So I definitely said no to a few people. And there was one night where I wasn't hosting the show. I was just there. And this guy came in like an hour before the 10 o'clock show. So he came in like 9 o'clock while the 8 o'clock show was on. And he was like, hey, I've got tickets to the next show. And he's like, but I really want to propose to my girlfriend in this show. And I was like, oh, we usually set these things up way in advance. And I don't think it's going to work. And he was like, no, it would just mean so much to me. And her whole family's going to be in the audience. And this is really the moment. And I was like, you know what? Okay, we're going to do it. All right. We don't normally do these last minute, but I'm going to arrange it. I'll talk to the host. Blah, blah, blah. So I went backstage. I talked to the cast. I was like, I know we don't normally do this last minute, but let's bring this guy up, blah, blah, blah. We set up a way we were going to do it. So the host and the players go to bring this guy up from the audience, and we always make it seem like they're just a random volunteer that we picked.
Right.
So they pick him, and they pick his girlfriend to come up with him, or the girl that he's supposed to propose to. We pick them both up on stage. And then, what they did was they picked her, not him. So they brought her up on stage and they asked her like, oh, where are you from? What's your name? Blah, blah, blah. But then they were like, do you have a significant other? And assuming she'd be like, yeah, my boyfriend's here. And she goes, yeah, my fiance is here in the audience.
Oh.
And when she said that, I was sitting off to the side. I watched the entire cast turn in my direction and look at me like, and I was like, I don't know what's going on. He said he was going to propose. And they were like, oh, so you're engaged. And she said, yeah, he proposed to me 2 weeks ago. My whole family's here. And the cast keeps looking back at me and I'm like, I don't know what to say. This guy just made a big deal about it. And then they were like, well, let's bring your fiance up and see what he wants to say. And they brought him up and handed him the microphone. And he just was like, I just wanted to say in front of everybody that I'm really glad we're getting married and I love you, blah, blah, blah. But it was just so awkward that we're expecting this proposal, but they're already engaged.
What?
And the whole cast, I will never forget, it was like all their heads on one swivel looking my direction. I don't know how to help you here. This is what he told me. He wanted to propose. He didn't tell me I've been engaged for weeks.
Yeah, how bizarre. I wonder what on earth he was thinking.
So bizarre, and just a totally awkward moment that did not, I always love to be able to tell a story that's like, and then we made that moment feel, but it just felt weird. Like it was just like, yay for this couple. All right, why don't you two go have a seat now? And we're going to play a different game. And it was just such an odd moment in the show that I think we all, afterwards we're posting the show and we were like, and I swear you guys, he said he wanted to propose. We didn't know what to do. So we just sent him away. And I was like, yeah, that's what I would have done too. I got nothing else.
You know what would have been really helpful in that moment?
What's that?
6 degrees.
Oh yeah, what the hell?
That's what they needed, a good what the hell.
Definitely what the hell moment for sure.
I understand that, or I think I was told that the rate of proposals has dropped a little in recent years, that there aren't as many as there used to be.
It definitely is not happening as regularly because there was a point in time where it was like every third or fourth show we'd have a proposal. And now it's like once every 4 or 5 months that will happen. Like I can't even think if we've had one since we've been in our new space.
Oh, well, They'll have to make note when it finally happens. It's 5 or 6 months. Well, I guess that's like twice a year. That still seems rather high.
Yeah, and it's still a lot. I always think it's weird to think about like how many proposals we've been involved in. And I wonder how many of those couples are still married.
Yeah.
Hopefully a lot of them.
Someone needs to do a study.
Right, a follow-up.
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely was there for a proposal where you could tell the woman said yes, but I'm pretty sure when they left, there was a deeper conversation beyond it because it was a very awkward yes. It was like, uh-huh. I was like, oh, I don't think that that's a real yes.
Yeah, I definitely saw one of those. I think from the audience where it was like, yeah, that was a yes to get off the stage, and that's not going to
Yeah,
be it's going to be a longer conversation.
yeah,
Potentially, it could still happen, but not based on the
right.
proposal we just saw.
But I don't think it's an immediate, I'm very happy about what you've just done
Yeah.
moment.
All right. So I just want to give you the opportunity. Not you don't have to talk about this, but you've been posting about it recently. So if you want to, you can, but you don't have to. It's kind of maybe outside of the purview of improv, maybe, but not really. Is there anything you want to say about the Star Wars Hotel?
So yeah, I was one of the immersive experience directors at the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser immersive experience. I will say it is one of the most incredible things I've been a part of. Also, one of the hardest things I've ever been a part of. Doing a 48-hour immersive experience is something that hadn't really been done on this scale before.
Yeah.
And so I think we all knew going into it that you're like, hey, we're trying something different. And I used to tell people, I was like, in our rehearsal process, I was like, if there's not at least one day where you have to go in your car and cry for about 10 minutes, then you're not doing it right. Because it just is so much involved in that process. It was such a big undertaking. And we were really creating these emotional moments. Like we had a lot of guests who would be overwhelmed with tears or who would just really be moved by what we were doing, because it really was, if you're someone who's grown up as a Star Wars fan, it really was a moment where it was like, you're literally in Star Wars right now. Like you're here and you're blowing up TIE fighters from the bridge, and there is a resistance hero who's looking at you going, I need your help and I can't do this without you. So you create these stories to help defeat the First Order, or you're with the First Order and you're going on that journey, or you help do a theft because we had a smuggler character and there was a theft that would happen on the ship. Just whatever it was like this fantasy fulfillment for a lot of people. And so to see how they emotionally attached to the stories that we were creating was really a very moving thing to be a part of. Ultimately, its pricing structure, I think, made it very difficult to sustain. I think the messages about what it even was were hard to really communicate to the general public. Most people call it the Star Wars Hotel. And then you hear this rate to stay there and you're like, why would I spend that much to stay in a hotel for 2 days? And you're like, no, it's not a hotel. It's an immersive experience. You're in a story from the minute you walk in till the minute you leave, unless you choose to step out of it.
Right.
Right. And that just hadn't been done. So it really was a very special experience, something that forced me to become a whole different level of director than I think I was before that experience. It was definitely something that tested us in new ways. And I learned so much. And so much of what I learned, I still use now every day. And it's such a bummer that that space is now becoming office buildings. But it was definitely something I'm so glad I was a part of.
Yeah. Do you think that there is the possibility of something else of that kind happening in the future? Not that there's anything being prepared or anything. Do you think it's a viable thing that could happen again?
Absolutely. I do think it is that type of immersive entertainment is really the model for the future, really putting people into stories versus showing them stories, especially in the world of theme parks. You look at Universal's opening a theme park this summer that it's all immersive experiences, really, in the way that they're trying to set it up. So I think this world of immersive entertainment is still growing. And I think some of what was experienced in the Galactic Star Cruiser will inspire future generations of this, just on a more scalable way, which I think is the trick. But you think like the guests who came through, there are these fan groups that exist still to this day. They do a convention that is a fan-driven convention. Disney has nothing to do with it. It's just a group of fans who do what they call HalseyCon every year. That is just a convention that they throw just for people who fell in love with the Star Cruiser, and they sell out every year, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it's not an official thing. It's an unofficial fan-led thing. So it shows you how much just being in that environment touched people.
Yeah.
I think Imagineering got to see that firsthand. I think a lot of industry professionals got to see that. So I think we'll see a lot more of it in the world of theme parks, but also beyond theme parks as well.
Kayla and I were on vacation. We were in near Ticonderoga, New York, and someone up there bought an old supermarket and had been for years painstakingly reconstructing the set of the original Star Trek.
Wow.
And you can go there and you can just do a tour, and it's just someone talks about it, and it is set up like the shooting set would have been, so they didn't try to construct it as if it were the actual Enterprise or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then there was a guy, it was a real small tour, it was Kayla and I and I think two other guys, and we got to the bridge set, which was, I mean, amazing reconstructions. And he was kind of a little embarrassed. And I don't know if he asked if we mind or whatever, but he took off like the jacket that he had on, and he was dressed in a uniform.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Starfleet uniform, and then was getting some pictures in the chair, and we were like, no, this is amazing. And that was just the set. And I was more of a Next Gen fan growing up because that's what was on when I was growing up. But that set, I mean, it was amazing to be there. And that was just the set. And I didn't get a chance to experience the Star Cruiser, but what I would say in just thinking about that experience, and when I've been able to see the props, from shows that I love, is that for one thing, y'all did it. Like, that was a monstrous undertaking, and you did it. And regardless of the reasons why it's no longer around, because I'm sure that treatises could be written on all of that, but you did it, you got it up, and you gave some people something that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And I think on some level, that's what theme parks want to do, is because they want to be that thing that you remember. I mean, and some of it's economic because they want you to come back and all that, but it's an amazing thing. And I was in awe of it from afar, and I was saddened when I heard that it was closing, because from up here, from this distance, it felt like it was never really given a chance to catch its stride, which I think is sad. But I love that it happened. I love that they took the risk to do something that had never been done before, and I hope that means that they're still willing to do things that have never been done before and keep pushing the envelope, because things can only get better.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think they can take the lessons that were learned in that process, both from successes and from struggles. There's amazing lessons to be learned in both, in what we did there. But even just that world of placing people into the stories is such a rare experience. I always tell people about the time because I helped open Galaxy's Edge too at Walt Disney World. But before that, I got to go out to California to see it. And, they had built it months before it actually opened, because there was marketing and filming that was happening there. So I was being taken on a tour by an Imagineer, and we were walking, and then we hit a point, and he's like, hey, before we go any further. And so we're in the empty Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which was such a cool experience for me, because no one else had seen it. It was still this thing. But this Imagineer goes, how huge of a Star Wars fan are you? And I was like, it's pretty big. It's a major part of my life. And he was like, okay, then I'm going to stop here. And he's like, you go turn the corner over here. And I was like, okay, what a weird thing to tell me to do. But I did. I turned the corner, and there was the full Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
It was a moment. I literally stopped and had a tear coming, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so cheesy. I'm crying in this moment. But it was like something that in my lifetime, I never thought I would actually be right there, and to have that. And the fact that the Imagineer completely knew that was the experience, if I was a lifelong Star Wars fan, that I would have. He was like, yeah, I wanted to give you a moment to just feel what you were going to feel before we walk through this area. And I was like, wow, thank you for that. Because that's a core memory now, is turning the corner and seeing the Millennium Falcon for the first time.
Yeah.
So when we were doing the Galactic Star Cruiser, it was like the same kind of thing. I was like, I want to do this for other people. I want us to help give them these core memories and give them this experience.
Yeah, and by all counts, you did.
I would say we certainly did for a lot of people, which I'll always be proud of.
I feel like even just the lands, and I mean, Galaxy's Edge is intended to do that same kind of thing, just not on quite as grand of a scale.
Right, because you're still in a theme park. So we're absolutely creating this immersive world there, but you still are among a couple thousand other people walking around. So it's harder to have that individualized moments, although they do happen, which is great. One of the things I always loved about, when you go to Galaxy's Edge is like Rey is there and Chewbacca's there, but they're not standing there waiting for a meet and greet. They are immediately immersed with you. They're walking with you. They're connecting with you. They're in universe. They're doing things. They're not just standing and waiting to take a picture with you.
Yeah. I was going to say that, and I think that's evidence to the contrary, but what I was going to say is, in terms of people there being in the theme park, the other people there aren't necessarily playing along.
Right.
Whereas the Star Cruiser, the idea is that everyone there is buying into the fact that this is where we are, this is what we're doing, and everyone's playing along.
Absolutely. Now, of course, there were people who you could see they'd sit in the atrium and you get the arms crossed. And those are the people I would always tell cast to look out for. But there are some people who are like, no, I don't want to play. And I'd always be like, well, why are you here? What an interesting choice you made to be here if you don't want to play. But for the most part, people were so ready to play. The first moment a character walked up to them and talked to them versus talking at them was a
Yeah.
crazy experience for a lot of people.
So how did you direct that? Because that seems like that would be, I mean, there's a plot, obviously you've got to follow a through line, of narrative through line, but interactions like that would be mostly improvised, right?
It's a mix of both. So there's certain things where it's like, hey, this character, you need to recruit people to join your side. And here's things you can say, because again, it is Star Wars IP too, so we can't just make stuff up.
Right, right.
So we have to be within our storyline and in our universe. So here's the toolbox you have to play in, but then the way you actually get there was different for every guest. And that was a lot of the training that we did. It wasn't just myself. There was a team of 6 directors that I was just one of them, plus creative directors. So there was so many people who worked on this experience. I was just one cog in this giant wheel. But that was a lot of ways that I would work with our cast, is to really just go, yeah, meet them where they are. Be a human or an alien, depending on who you are. But be with them. Yes, you're trying to get them here, but they're not going to go there if you haven't appealed to them, if you haven't connected with the human nature of them. So even if you walk up to someone and they're completely nervous, you walk up to them and you're like, hey, you look like someone I can trust. I'm with the resistance. But you see they immediately kind of back off a little bit. I always said, observe that and use that. I'm so sorry. I could see that I just made you nervous.
Yeah.
What's making you nervous right now? And then just having that conversation with them would often get them right there where you needed them to be. So we gave them these improv tools, but really most of the tools that we gave them were living in the world of listening and living in that yes and world for them.
Yeah.
That it's okay that this person's nervous or that this person's overexcited. Those things are all okay. So yes, you are. And I understand, because this is something that is unique and different, which we're talking about the story, but we're also talking about, hey, this moment that we're having is unique and different for you as well.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that only feeds into the reality of it, because it's like, yeah, this is actually happening. I'm not ignoring you. I'm not ignoring this thing that's happening. You're here with me. I'm here with you. You're actually here. This is actually happening.
Yeah. And that was a big part of our training, right? When we were working with the actors and the performers that were there, it would be like, yes, you have your scripted scene here, but if something happens that disrupts it, your character heard that. So if you're in a moment where you're talking to someone and you're like, hey, we're in serious trouble, and they're laughing, that's a weird response.
Yeah.
So that is something that if you were really in that scenario, you might feel uncomfortable with. An interesting thing we did at Star Cruiser that I've never seen us do in any theme park ever is, if someone was working for the opposite team, our cast were empowered to kick them out of a particular situation where they were in, where maybe they were going over secret plans, but we knew that this person was seen talking with the other side of this battle.
Yeah.
So the actors would say, weren't you talking to the lieutenant? Why are you in this room with us right now? And if they really believed that person was double trained, they would say, you have to leave. And they'd kick them out, which is just such a non-theme park thing to do.
Yeah. But very living in that world thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely living in that world. Because, if you're really in Star Wars and you think someone's a secret spy, you're not going to share all the secrets with them.
Yeah. Well, I asked because I sensed the loss in some of your Facebook posts, and also was just amazed at the whole thing from, like I said, from afar. Yeah, it's an amazing thing that happened, even if it only happened for a brief period of time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a miracle that it even happened. And
Yeah.
for all of us who were involved in it, it is a loss. The day they announced our closing, it was like we were, as one giant family, kind of all grieving together. And everybody grieved in their own way, just like in real life how we grieve. Everybody had their own unique way to grieve, where some people were angry and some people were crying and some people were cold about, just everybody had their own way to grieve, because it was something that we lived and breathed being there, especially creating that 48-hour experience. You spent a lot of time with guests too, and being able to let go of that connection when it was over is always interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd like to switch gears a little bit. I want to run through my Proust questionnaire questions.
All right.
So, Rob, how do you get into the proper headspace to play?
For me, it's like being a kid, and I tell myself my friends are coming over to play now. So I have to put myself into that brain of, hey, I get to play now. I think when I was first learning improv, I put a lot of pressure on myself that it was like, now it is time to play and I need to really focus on playing.
Yeah.
Whereas now that I've been doing it so long, for me, it's like, I get to play right now. So let me just be open to play instead of feeling like I'm about to work.
Do you have any particular pre-show ritual or anything you like to do right before a show that you find helpful?
To me, it's just super important to connect with the cast that is there. I have to make sure I speak to everybody who's there. I love for us to have a few jokes going on backstage because I need that energy so that I feel safe to play, right? Because you can't play if you don't feel
Yeah.
like you're in a safe environment. And so if I don't feel that connection with the other players, I don't feel safe to play. So I need that green room time.
Yeah.
Nothing's worse than running late and like, okay, I've got 5 minutes. Let me just connect with you guys real quick. And then we go, I love for us to have some time to just sit and connect and chat and, hey, what's going on in your life? What's going on in your life? Just those little moments of like reminding ourselves that we're people and humans who are going to play together.
Yeah. Awesome. What is your favorite get for?
I love because I love doing personality driven shows. I really like to do the technique of share something from my life and then ask them a question that connects to it.
Yeah.
Guy recently was like, oh, I have two little dogs and they're the center of my world. Who else is obsessed with something in your world? Because that makes you a human too. The audience starts thinking of you as, oh, that's a person who's a dog parent.
Yeah. And you form that connection, and it also is a great way to avert some of which is my next question, some of the suggestions we don't like. So, Rob, what is your least favorite suggestion?
Oh gosh, you know which one I hate? I honestly hate the what's your favorite color? I hear that one a lot because someone will always say blue, and then we'll ask a follow-up question. What's something that's blue? It's always the sky or the ocean or a Smurf. And I was like, it just to me does nothing for us.
Yeah. So so as far as the suggestion itself, though, would you say that sky, ocean, and Smurf are your least favorite, or is there a flavor of the week right now? Is there something?
You know what? Sometimes I love when it's a pop culture thing, and luckily it's kind of past, but there was a good chunk of time where it was always Twilight would come from the audience, or right now, currently it's K-pop. When we're asking for music genres, we get K-pop a lot. And
Oh, really?
that's hard to do in an improv show where it's like we have a keyboard and a microphone and we don't have choreography, but K-pop comes up a lot when we're doing musical things. And it's always one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how we can do this and make it effective.
Yeah.
From, Anthony Riley on the keyboard, just playing K-pop for us. This isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think I may have told this story in a different one, but there was in the studio where I was on the opposite team, so we were feeding them the things, and I thought I had heard either Adam or Gabe singing K-pop in the hallway, and whoever it was on stage, it was the opposite one. So it was like the last one. I was like, yeah, I think we'd like to hear some K-pop, and they kind of chuckled in a way that told me that it wasn't in their wheelhouse, and I had accidentally sabotaged their in the studio.
Oops.
So yeah, that's funny to me. That keeps coming up now organically.
Yeah, and it comes up all the time now, and it's so funny to me because it's such part of pop culture right now. So of course it comes. I also hate getting politics.
Yeah.
As a suggestion that comes up a lot because obviously we're in a
Yeah.
very divisive political climate, and it's the front thing on most people's minds these days. So of course it's going to come up.
Yeah.
But I always try to deflect out of it in any way I can because I'm like, okay, no matter what we do, 50% of our audience is going to be mad.
Yeah. Or if not mad, you're going to depress, or
Right.
it's going to be just a weird feeling.
Absolutely. So like the Truth or Dare show, we bring politics into it because it's an audience who kind of knows what they're getting. It's a very much this LGBT character, right? I'm basically a drag queen. So you know what you're getting when you walk into that. So to me, I'm like, okay, that audience knows what they're here for, but a general audience doesn't. So we don't want to remind them of the things that they're trying to escape from for these 90 minutes.
Exactly. Now, not P Sparkle, because P Sparkle, I would say, is a character.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're still Rob on stage, how would you describe your onstage persona? Is onstage Rob different than everyday Rob?
I think they're very closely related, but onstage Rob is definitely, I'd say, more playful than everyday Rob.
Okay.
I'm a playful person in general, but on stage, I think my personal stage persona is, I think I live in the world of the big brother who's going to give you crap, but ultimately loves you.
Yeah.
So I love to tease and to play games and to mess with my fellow players. I love to call out the weird things that they do and to enjoy that moment, but always with kind of a gentle touch.
Yeah. Thinking about what you said earlier as well. So there've been just a few people thus far that have been like, I think I'm more or less the same. So it was Jose, Bob, and you, I think, that have been like, I think I'm more or less the same. And for Jose and Bob especially, I'd be like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. I agree with you with what you're saying about you as well from my experience. And what I would add to that is I think that, and this is just because of what you said earlier about how you're watching the audience, but I feel like onstage Rob is probably more aware as well.
Yeah.
because
Yes,
you're picking
absolutely.
up on all that stuff so that you can be that big brother character.
Absolutely. I am so hyper aware during shows in a way that I absolutely am not in my real life. In real life, I'm just kind of going but when I'm on stage, it's that full observing of everything. I always say it's like I have a Terminator screen in my head that's analyzing everything that's happening around.
Yeah, love it. Rob, what inspires you on stage?
I bring it back to playfulness again. It inspires me when we play and when we're in a genuine moment of play, because there's times where we're engineering play, and then there's times where it's like, no, we are genuinely playing
Yeah.
right now. We have no idea where we're going. We're just enjoying each other. We're enjoying the moment. We're enjoying what the audience is here. Play to me is what has inspired my career and a lot of my life, is in how do we play together? How do we create more opportunities to play?
Is there anything that shuts you down or takes you out of it on stage?
I think aggression is hard for me on stage. I have a hard time playing against aggression. And very often because we want to get to conflict, we tend to get mad. But when someone like kind of hits a place where they're yelling, I think that puts me in an immediate shutdown place,
Yeah.
because Rob, the person who wants to nurture, is immediately like, no, 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 we don't have to yell. But I'm like, no, I should be yes anding their yell, but my brain doesn't want. I'm like, oh no, I need to get them out of this emotional place they're in. When you're like, no, wait, the emotional place is where we play, but when it goes to that angry place, it's a quick shutdown for me.
Do you think that's part of your experience as host kicking in or something else?
I think so. I think there's elements of the host in me thinking about the audience's perspective, and I'm a pretty empathetic person. So I think about like, hey, maybe there's someone in the audience that this is a trigger for them too.
Yeah.
Right? Like even when I'm teaching, I especially teach when we're working, I'm like, hey, we shouldn't really get to this angry place, this yelling place, but especially if you're a male yelling at a female,
Yeah.
I was like, there's just something. We know we're all playing pretend, but there's something about that can be triggering.
Yeah.
We don't know what our whole audience has gone through. And I don't want to put someone in a dark place by watching our comedy scene.
Right. In your estimation, what makes a good scene partner?
Someone who surprises you. To me, I love, what's kept me doing this for so many years is I love to be surprised.
Yeah.
There was a time in my early career where I was like, I wanted every young improviser when we're growing, we're like, it's a good scene if it went the way I wanted it to, right? Whereas when we really live in that world, we're like, no, it's a good scene when I have no idea where it was going to go. And I was like, I discovered it as I was in it. And so I love a scene partner who will surprise me and will allow themselves to be surprised as well.
Yeah. Is there any advice you would give to your younger self?
The biggest one would be chill out. I think when it came to improv, I think when I was new at SAC too, I was so hungry to be an ensemble member that I think I was trying so hard that I lost a lot of the fun
Yeah.
in my early days. I wasn't having as much fun with it because I was so ambitious that I was missing sometimes but we can just play here and we can love where we are and we can love what's happening right now without having to be like, well, why haven't I gotten that opportunity or that opportunity?
Yeah.
So I think that left me a little high strung in my early improv days in a way that I don't feel now. And life is so much better not feeling that.
Yeah, I bet. What is your favorite type of character to play?
There's so many. I used to do P. Sparkle as Pepe in a different time, who, had a Latin accent. And as we have grown as a society and as we've learned certain things, I morphed the character to no longer use that voice. But what I always loved about playing the character was that he was kind of so sweetly dumb. I love playing someone who's just sweet and dumb
Yeah.
because there's such a purity there because you can get away with so much when you're dumb. I used to work with Sleuths, which is a dinner theater that we have here in Orlando. It's a murder mystery dinner comedy show. And it was very immersive with the audience. But I loved playing this character named Eric, who was this very dumb British soccer player. So one of the big lines in the show was like, we need to tell you about Simon. He's dead. And I'd go, oh no, is he all right? And they were like, no, he's dead. And I was like, oh, but he's okay. And it just that like that dim, but there's something like about that sweet dumbness that the audience just connects to as well.
Yeah.
There's a purity there that I love.
I think it's because we all know someone, right?
Yes, we all know someone who's just delightfully out of it.
If you could do a scene with anyone living, who would it be?
Ooh, I would love to work with, of all people, Tina Fey.
Yeah.
I just love her humor and her self-deprecation, but the intelligence that's there, and you can just like even on film, you can see her like when the camera's on her. There's so much behind the eyes going on there.
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing. I think you were in the show where we got to play with Wayne Brady. Did you ever get to do one of the Wayne shows?
No, I didn't.
And I got to do one of them, and I will say that was a really incredible experience. Like, he has a reputation for being one of the best improvisers in the world, but doing scenes with him, I was like, yeah, wow, I see it. Because it was just like so welcome and so like, oh, you just gave me everything I need to be successful in this moment, and still left their opportunity for play and surprise. But you just walked in and sprinkled a little like perfect storytelling into what we're doing. And he has that energy that he radiates that is very much a celebrity energy. But then when you're on stage, he's just with you and he's just there.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tina Fey would be that way as well.
Yeah. I think she's a good choice. If you could do a scene with anyone who is deceased in the pantheon of everyone that has ever lived, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh, this one's got me stumped. I don't really think about doing improv with dead people very often.
They don't have many good offers is probably why. They just lay there.
That's true. They're just sitting there. You know who I would love to play against would be Joan Rivers.
Oh.
I think just her wit was so quick, and the way she could volley, like,
yeah.
If you ever watched, like, there's this great clip of her and Betty White when she was guesting as the Tonight Show host, and Betty White was the guest, and they're just throwing this playful shade at each other, but they did it so well and so effortlessly, and to just watch the way they could do that and the humor that was there, but also, again, still making fun of themselves while making fun of each other, but all with love and joy, was just so fun to watch. So I would love to work with her. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I would pay to see that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think she would run me under the table, but it would be fun.
Yeah, I would pay to see that. If you could do a scene with anyone fictional, who would it be?
For some reason, Harry Potter came to my mind, and I don't know why. That's a weird choice. Because he's not really known for his performing abilities. But I just think it would be interesting to see what he would bring if he ever took an improv class, because it's the story of this, kid who had nothing and then was introduced to this completely different world. And I love scenes where people from different backgrounds kind of have to figure each other out. So I think it would be fun to figure him out.
Do you think Hermione would use the little time thing to rewind and then he could do something different, make a different choice?
That could be. There'd be a new way to do new choice, right? We play the time turner.
Yeah. You just never know that original choice to have enjoyed it.
Yeah. Like, I didn't get to experience that with you. But also Hermione would be the worst improv student. Because she'd be the one who's like, nope, you said if I had a character and a relationship, then the scene was going to work, right? She'd be trying to do the homework.
See, now I want to see a scene with those three,
right?
Because they're very different archetypes.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. What do you find the most helpful from the booth?
I think the booth can be so wonderful in the way that they can set up an environment. I love when a scene starts and they start it with a sound or a lighting cue that just gives you more of a sandbox to play in. Really good tech can, even just something as simple as, we get a suggestion of a soap opera, right? But they come in with this soft lighting and play that soap opera theme music. It just does so much to create an environment that we get to join in on.
Yeah. What do you find least helpful from the booth?
It's a pet peeve of mine, actually, from the booth, is there's a microphone up there, and sometimes the tech wants to play, and so they'll play on the mic, and they'll say something to us, but I feel like it's such a disassociated moment because we don't see them. So it's awkward for us on stage, and it's awkward for the audience to, like, we're doing something, we hear, like, hey, Rob, what about blah, blah, blah? And you're like, what? Who's speaking right now? Is that God? Right? So just that moment where I think sometimes they forget that the audience can't see them. So if you're going to do that, announce yourself. Hey, it's me, so-and-so in the booth. I wanted to add this piece for you. But they just kind of will speak it, and you're like, nobody knows where it's coming from.
Yeah. Everyone's looking to see whose mouth is moving.
That, where you're like, wait, who's talking right now? What's going on? And even on stage, I've had that moment before of like, who's talking? And I'm like, oh, it's the tech.
Other than laughter, what audience sound do you revel in?
You know what I love is a very simple thing when something comes out in the scene and the audience goes, "Aw," or the opposite. They're like, like just hearing those two things means whatever we're doing was so engrossing that the audience got into it,
Yeah, for sure.
right? That they actually experienced an emotion in watching us is really cool to me.
And they believed what they were watching, what they were seeing.
Yes. Enough to like, if you've ever like said something where maybe you're the villain in a scene and you say something rude and the audience is like, "Ooh," and you're like, "Oh, they're invested enough in my character that me saying that made them go like, oh, I can't believe he'd say that."
Yeah. I'm going to hold back in the green room, guys. I'm not going to shake hands. I don't think they'll dig me.
Absolutely. They don't like me anymore. I was the villain.
What is the worst venue you've played in?
Oh, I did an improv corporate gig once, and we were in a temple because it was a bar mitzvah. So already you can imagine just the general awkwardness of doing it was like a two to go. So it was Chris Dinger and I doing a two-man improv show for someone's bar mitzvah, but they didn't have us in the side room. They had us like right there, right by the Torah, and
Oh,
we're just up there. And I was like, this just feels uncomfortable. That I'm in a place where a holy person is supposed to be, and we're doing our little silly show. Plus it was so echoey
yeah.
that I feel like nobody really was able to hear us either correctly. And so it just was one of those things where I was like, one of those gigs where you're like, all right, I got to get through about 20 more minutes and then it's over.
How was it received?
The kids were about half interested, I'd say. The adults, not at all. But the kids who were with the bar mitzvah were like half interested. But that was also part of the problem, right? Because the adults are all in the back just talking at full volume too.
Yeah.
As Chris and I are like, look at us doing the silly show
Yeah.
next to the Torah.
What is the best note or the best words of wisdom you've received?
I think one of the ones for me that really made the difference was I took a workshop with Dave Rosowski, and he's a unique improviser and had a unique way of doing it. And the truth was, I actually didn't really connect with the way he was teaching as I was learning something. But then he said one thing to me that made such a difference, where he was like, "You don't have to work as hard as you're working."
Ah,
And so as an improviser, I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, because you're working and you're doing all this work to try to create all these stories. And he's like, you got everything you need right there. There's your improv partner. They're right there. They're everything you need. Stop working and trying to create all these stories and create all these things. Just be there with them. Stop working so hard. And I think that was one of those key moments in my improv education where I think I became a better improviser in that moment,
yeah.
because I did learn how to really dial in with my partner versus, getting in your head and trying to create all these scenarios and just kind of going, oh, no, but my partner just turned their back. And that's a very valuable thing. And I can be there and I don't have to
Yeah.
invent a scenario. I can literally just go, hey, you're turning your back on me. And we can be in that moment together.
Yeah. What is the least helpful note you've received or could conceive of?
Here's one that I get often is when someone's like, just be you. Because we talked about personality on stage, but when someone says just be yourself, which I'm guilty of this as a director, I've done it before. I've said to someone like, oh, just be yourself. But as I've kind of grown, I've realized most people don't know what that means, to say just be yourself. Because also, what is myself to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's just so good. You're like, what does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, initially I was going to say, so it's really the application of it. Like, how do you apply that? Like, what does that mean? But I like what you said too about who am I to you? Like, what does it mean to you? How is that valuable to you to be saying that to me?
Right. Because when you're saying just be yourself, what aspect of myself should I be right here? Because we're all many things, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, Rob, if there were an Academy Awards for everything improv, what would you be nominated for?
I would say best audience connection,
Love it.
because that is always a big focus for me, is connecting with my audience.
I think you do a great job of it too. So I would nominate you for that.
Well, thanks.
If you are remembered 100 years from now for something improv related, what do you want it to be?
For me, it would be teaching other people how to find the fun in improv.
Yeah.
It's something I really try to take on in my classes when I'm teaching. And I teach a specific class now that we do after your initial 4 levels. Then you get to my class. And like one of the first things I say to everybody on day 1 is, I'm like, now I want you to let go of every rule that you've learned in the process now, because I want you to just play right now and have fun, because we learn all those improv rules and tips and then they mess with our mind, because now all of a sudden everything feels hard. And we forget that you're like, yeah, but I'm also just on stage with another person having fun.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of improv scenes that I'll watch as a teacher and be like, what was missing in that scene is fun. You weren't having fun. You were creating this character. You were doing all this stuff, but you weren't having fun.
Yeah, it does make a huge difference, both in terms of watchability and the feeling of it on stage.
Absolutely. It's all the difference in my mind.
Do you find you gravitate toward that because of the experiences you've talked about before, where you said you were so invested in becoming an ensemble member that you kind of, some of that fell away?
Absolutely. I think when I was not moving forward and when I was probably not pleasant to be in scenes with were all those times when I was not having fun, when I was so focused on a goal and so focused on, all right, in this scene, I want to really tell a good, strong character story, which is a fine goal to have. But also sometimes you got to lighten up and have fun, right? Because no one in the audience is like, wow, that character work that he just did was really impressive.
Right.
But the audience might turn to each other and be like, oh, that was super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rob Ward, for joining me on the podcast. It's been delightful talking to you again. It's been years, I think, since we spoke.
It really has. So it's great to chat with you too.
That's it for this interview with Rob Ward. I hope you've all been enjoying these as much as I have. If you have any questions, thoughts, or suggestions, you can reach me via email at improvbrain@gmail.com. You can reach out with interview suggestions, questions you think I should ask my guest, corrections of anything I may have gotten wrong, or any other reason. Improv is a huge extended family, and I'm happy you're a part of it. Until next time, thanks for listening to Improv Autopsy.